Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host, Raider. And in this video, as the thumbnail says, I'm going to be talking about VBA employees reviewing your social media when they're reviewing your claims. Now, is this clickbait? No, this is not. I'm going to be very upfront with you. Yes, this happens. Now, it's not a sanctioned practice by the VSRs, RVSR raters, and the authorizers. It's not. It's not something that the VBA condones, but in the specific instance of raters who adjudicate your claim, they have a lot of authority. And if they use social media, if they learn stuff in social media that changes their mind on your rating decision, they have some discretion to be able to change things around, or at least to go back and ask the examiner to, hey, can you double check whether or not that veteran can walk? Because I see them down here 10 days ago in Cabo just dancing, you know? And that this is just one of the instances. Somebody had asked me about this in a post, whether or not the VA uses your social media, and the VBA, some people do. Some people definitely do. And the reason why I know that is because I know people that do. I know people and I've talked to them and I've begged them not to do it. But here's the problem. Even though it's not a sanctioned practice, QRT cannot track them in how they, like, QRT cannot determine that social media was how they got around the current circumstances, like how they changed the outcome of the rating. Typically what you see is, so this is the typical use case scenario for if social media was utilized in changing the outcome of your claim. You'll have the VSR order you an exam, or you have submitted a private DBQ. The private DBQ and or VA examination will be for something that is either musculoskeletal, neurological. It can be almost any single disorder. And what happens is that either the private DBQ has an established outcome that says the veteran can or cannot do this, that, and the other. Then I want to say biased rater. Just the social media rater. We'll just call him that. The social media rater, the one that's reviewing that for no reason, will go through and they will check your social media presence if you give them access to. And they will review to see if your pictures, your current posts, your current social media presence contradicts things that are said in the private DBQ or the VA CMP exam. If they find, if they find discrepancies, right? Like if you say you can't walk, but they have you up dancing, then what'll happen is, if it's a private DBQ, it gets instantly tossed. The private DBQ will become instantly tossed based upon any social media contradiction to the narrative that is in the private DBQ. So those get tossed. You get a new exam based upon the social media presence alone. Now they'll say it's inauthentic. They don't have to explain how they came to their conclusion other than to identify inauthenticity of the private DBQ, and they will deem it insufficient for VA purposes. But for the CMP exam, right, for the VA CMP exam through either a vendor or the VHA, what happens then? Well, what I've noticed and I've seen and I've experienced and I've talked to my peers about in a not nice way is, they shouldn't be doing it. But when they do it, they actually will use the social media presence and defer it back to development and have the examiner chime in. So like if, let's say you have a shoulder injury and you say, the examiner said that you can't, or your range of motion, you can't go out more than 45 degrees. Let's say that you cannot move your shoulder out from, like, the position of attention is 0. You cannot move it outwards in any direction more than 45 degrees. That's what your VA CMP examiner said in their examination. However, your social media rater, the one that's really interested in that, finds a picture of you from like 10 days ago in which you're clapping above your head. So that they would be like, "Hey, look, I found pictures of can this guy clap above his head? Because I have social media, like I've seen pictures of him clapping above his head. Can he do that? Because you said that he can only go to 45 degrees in this particular plane of motion, but I show him it going almost up to 140 degrees of above his shoulder level, which he shouldn't be able to do. Is this possible?" So then the examiner goes, "Oh shoot, I don't know," and the examiner will either amend their they'll do an amendment to the DBQ, and they'll say, "Well, based upon this," or they'll have a new examination order to re-examine the veteran based upon your social media account showing that. Now, what is the problem? Okay, with the social media. Well, you know how I did a video a while back saying that your guys' photos can't matter in a claim? Like we can't use photos of your skin condition to to justify rating you at a higher percentage because we can't use it as evidence because we can't qualify when it happened, we can't qualify that it's you, we can't this, that, and the other, right? Well, the same is true on the opposite end of the spectrum, is that we can't use photos. We don't know when they were taken. We don't know what the context is because remember, we've never seen you. So we don't know if that photo was from today, yesterday, 1,000 years ago. We don't know, right? So that's why we shouldn't be using it. We shouldn't be using photos. Now, musculoskeletal conditions at like 10%, 20%, this is not really the domain of the social media RVSR. And I'm just going to keep calling them that because that's what they are. They're really fixated on social media. But what is like, let's say you're going to go from 10% in your back to 40% in your back. Well, that almost instantly, whenever you get nearly to a maximum scheduler rating for something that's a big ticket item like that, that's when they're looking at social media. They're looking to see, oh, I have a picture of him bending over and touching his toes, which means that that's all BS. Well, the problem with that, once again, is it can be taken out of context. You might not be getting your 40% for the fact of your normal range of motion. You could be getting your 40% for your thoracolumbar spine due to the fact that you have flare ups. And maybe the photo was taken outside of a flare up. That's why, it's hard to take photo evidence in context. So, in a black and white situation, like I can't stand, like I'm paralyzed, arms and legs, quadriplegic, but I've got photos of you dancing around, right? That's where the social media RVSR or Raider, that's where they justify every single action is because they're looking for fraud. They're looking for that black and white fraud. But there's also the discrimination where they're looking for the gray areas to try to find any reason to say no to you, any reason to downplay your percentage. Now, and once again, I've never done this. I don't agree with it, but let's talk about, two things. First thing, what do you do? Like, how do you combat this? Well, the way that you combat this is you lock your social media account to where only your friends can deal with it. Now, I know for a fact that somebody like Lieutenant Dan will go, well, if you didn't have anything to hide, then you're only locking it because you've got something to hide. No, I'm locking it because the government is weird sometimes. Like people will go out of their way. And if, it's like being having a eyewitness testimony. Eyewitness testimony is not good. It's oftentimes wrong. And the same with this, a photo can be taken out of context. It can be misinterpreted. It can be, it's not exclusive to photos either. It can be like you say, hey, look, I'm going out of town to Cabo. Well, if you have agoraphobia, how are you going out to Cabo? Like, how are you getting on a plane with agoraphobia? How are you, being in a different area than, like, how are you managing that? Like, that seems to be directly contraindicated to what you were talking about or what you're diagnosed with and what we've service connected you for. So it's not just musculoskeletal conditions. Keep that in mind. And it's not just photos. It's just better to leave that out of the equation because number one, it's not a sanctioned evidentiary review. You cannot submit VA Form 21-4142 and 4142A in order to have the VA pull your social media presence. You can't get a release of information for your social media presence because it doesn't matter. So, my first thing is lock your social media account, veterans, every single one of you. If you don't know how, then ask somebody, but lock it down, friends and family only, because typically what happens, VA employees cannot access social media on VA computers. It actually will send something to the release of information department or to IT saying, "Hey, look, he went to an unsanctioned site," yada yada yada. So how do these social media raiders get around this? Well, the way they get around it is they use their phone. You can use your phone in the office. Like they'll just look you up on, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And to your detriment, if you leave it open, if you leave it able to be accessed to everyone. Pardon me. But that's the first thing. So that's my first advice. And I say just close it because it's not anybody's business what you do in a day, where you do it at. I mean, I'm a paranoid person because of my mental health disorder, but I keep my stuff locked down. Hell, I don't even use social media actually, except for YouTube. And you see how kind of protective I am of my identity with that. But the second thing I was going to talk to you guys about is what recourse do you have if you think social media is the result of a change in the outcome of your benefit? Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say that you submitted your claim, right? You submitted either a private DBQ or you went to the VA examination. It went to the rater, right? So I don't know what that step that is. I don't know the steps, but like let's say step 6. And it goes to the rater and then it gets kicked back, right? So if you have a private DBQ and it gets kicked back, then you know that they have deemed the private DBQ insufficient. But how do you know? Because we don't get very much information as veterans as to why things got kicked back. And they sure as heck are not going to tell you that it was due to your social media. So what typically happens is the social media rater will go, "Oh man, I found all this stuff." And then they'll kick it back, like I said. And then they'll ask the examiner, a VA examiner, to please review for the discrepancy, the gray area. And we're mostly talking about the gray area discrepancy. But what is your recourse if you believe that happened? And I'm going to be honest with you, none. There is no recourse. If they change the outcome, because the reason why is because the examiner's first impression is medically legitimate until they do an addendum and then they change it. As long as they provide a rationale as to why they changed from the initial DBQ to the addendum DBQ, then as long as they provide a rationale, it is legit. And you have no way to prove that your social media was the catalyst to this change. So this is why I'm doing the video, is because it is best to just shut the door on your social media and lock the door to where they can't gain access to it because they can monkey around with it. Now, finally, what happens if, let's say, QRT finds out about it and they go, "Well, you shouldn't, how did you come to this conclusion? Like, why did you defer it back? What evidence did you have to defer it back?" From the evidence that was submitted and is in their VA records, this looked good. Why did you send it back? Well, the problem with that, now that would be a good question, right? That would be a good question that the rater would normally have to answer. However, if the addended DBQ actually changes, then the end justifies the means. QRT is less likely to even be concerned about it because the DBQ changed based upon a new set of evidence that for whatever reason, the rater found. They're not going to get in trouble for it. Also, for these individuals, they only have 3 quality pulls a month. So the odds of them getting actually caught doing this unsanctioned action is rare. And even if they get caught, if the results change based upon their social media review, then QRT will not error them. So it emboldens them to keep doing it. There's no downside to them doing it. That's why it's a morality issue where I'm like, look, and that's a bigger problem with the VA and the rules and regulations, is that you can have people that rate, I mean, night and day in how they rate things because they don't get in trouble. They'll do it a certain way and it won't be right. But because they don't get in trouble, they reinforce the bad habits and they continue on. Now, some of the individuals that do the social media reviews, some of the raters, they're doing it because that's the way they were taught to do it by some of their mentors or something like that. And they haven't been caught doing it and they're just doing it. Now, others, it's malicious. It is malicious to try to find fraud. It's that ever pursuit to find fraud, like they want to be the Matlock of, fraud review or something. I don't know. Like it's not the job they're paid to do, but it's the job they want to do. So I don't know. That's about all I've got for you in this one. Now, I would like to take some time to thank everybody that's watching the video, everybody that's subscribing. I would like to thank all the members, all the VSRs and raters who actually donate their hard-earned money and time to watching the videos and sponsoring the channel. But so you guys doing that, awesome. Appreciate you guys. And then if you can, like and subscribe. That's about all I got for you today. Raider out.